Hello again. I'm back and here today with the purpose of discussing the latest developments in RWBY Ice Queendom. But before we begin, two things. One, turns out the RWBY Justice League movie is a two-parter, which is rad. Two, I want to thank my wonderful patrons for making these episodes possible. So, quick summary. We open in media res with RWBY already inside the dream. Thank you, Juniper, for serving as exposition sources in previous episodes. She encounters a giant sign with arrows going every which way, which is a perfect reflection of Weiss's contradictory headspace and the expectations placed on her. RWBY encountered a giant dust train robbed by the White Fang, who have been blurred with grim in terms of design. We also find out there's coins which can create doors, maps, and phones to communicate with the outside world, but they all require Shion's aura to use, so RWBY has to take care of them sparingly. We also get to see the inside of the Imperial City, as well as the contradictory nature of stuff like following the true path, but there being a wall in the way. RWBY tries to find Weiss and ends up spending some time in a factory, kills some robots, reveals she can create decoys, and finds a prison where all the dummies are kept. Bye, Jenner. And we see how Weiss is living in this world and the expectations placed on her, along with the fact her grandfather is basically worshipped. There's hints she had some kind of interaction with the pre-existing dream RWBY, and possibly Blake as well, and she seems quite hurt when RWBY, understandably upset by Weiss's actions, declares that once she wakes her up, they will never speak again. Also, Blake and Yang are preparing to enter the dream when they are needed. Okay, summary over. Now, first and foremost, the art remains gorgeous. The design for Atlas rocks in its own unique way, and the spectacular tableaus of icy caps are gorgeous. I also really like the juxtaposition used. For instance, we get build up on the SDC workers' lives being miserable, and they are, but it's also contrasted with the Jacques statue singing songs about work. Then we get the ridiculousness of the dummies prison, only to cap it off with a reminder that Weiss will end up in that prison and lose all her rights to be a Schnee if she's disappointing. Shion's speech about the dream possibly whisking them away but not intending to drown them with that of a river metaphor was really engaging and sets up a potential intrigue. The series is also doing a good job balancing that knife's edge with RWBY, where she's adorable and fun but also ruthless and goal-oriented. I quite like the action still, and the fact they were also able to reincorporate the Shadow People as the residents of Atlas and Willow, that was genius. Willow in particular is a shadow who is basically trapped on a single wall, laughing and crying hysterically, unable to interact or intervene or do anything but exist as a spectre making noise in the background is heart-rendingly clever. All of Weiss's family translations work like this, and it's a clear signal as to how much of her worst traits are informed by her living situation and Atlas in general. Nicholas is a godlike symbol, but also one Jacques implicitly puts himself above rather than, her grandfather. Jacques is an ever-present universal force whose pictures and statues dominate everywhere and watch everyone, while his projected form looms over Weiss and fills up the entire room. Winter is reduced to a book of harsh rules and laws who Weiss turns to for advice and judgment. Whitley, rather like Cannon, flitters between mocking and subtly assisting Weiss, but in such a way that almost seems to be mocking her. Meanwhile, Klein has been divided and mostly separated from her. Now, let's talk about the nightmare overall. It's really messed up on obvious levels compared to Jean's. This is a whole world, and Weiss is so steeped in complexes and issues that it's got a ton to work with here. What's integral for discerning audience members to recall is that this is manufactured by the Nightmare Grimm in order to exacerbate and feed off Weiss's negativity. This isn't Weiss but without filters. This is Weiss, but every last microscopic issue is being violently exaggerated to undo her progress and keep her steeped in negativity. Jean's operated on a similar level. He was growing as a person, and then the nightmare came in and started tearing it all down. Weiss's just has a lot more to work with, but the simple fact is, Winter is reduced to nothing but a book of harsh laws to follow, as opposed to a figure who mentors, protects, and cared for Weiss. This shows that these nightmare versions are manufactured amplifications rather than reflective of Weiss's true feelings. This also applies to the White Fang and the Faunus. They're a construct meant to reinforce Weiss's negative feelings towards the Faunus to keep her fearful and angry, so her pre-existing contentions are exacerbated to a level beyond extreme. This is a prison trapping Weiss and exploiting all of her negative feelings and beliefs about others and herself. This is also why her friends from Beacon are locked in a prison and unable to speak or otherwise unable to enter the tower under normal circumstances. We even see this in how the nightmare's hold isn't complete. Weiss snuck out to associate with Ruby and still remembers her. She doesn't remember Blake, but at the same time, Blake has not been swallowed by the grim Faunus design and is flittering about there somewhere, forcing Weiss to think. It really is all perfectly summed up with that sign Ruby found. Weiss is full of contradictions and the nightmare is preying on her uncertainty and change of heart. And yeah, that's what I have for now. Interesting stuff to be sure. Thanks for tuning in. If you would like to help support these episodes and get early access to scripts, videos and stories, please hit up my Patreon linked below. If you'd like to commission 3D art, follow the link to my Ko-fi or Twitter and we can chat. Thanks for stopping by.